I never thought I'd be one of those guys posting his life's destruction on Reddit, but here I am at 2:47 a.m., unable to sleep, trying to make sense of how 15 years of marriage and everything I believed about my family turned out to be an elaborate lie. My name is Jonathan Reed. I'm 42, and I used to think I had it all figured out. I was wrong about everything. It started 3 months ago with something so small I almost dismissed it completely. I came home from work early, rare for a systems architect juggling 3 major client deployments, and walked into what felt like a crime scene. Not literally, of course, but the energy in the house was all wrong. Elena, my wife of 15 years, was standing in the kitchen with her phone pressed against her ear, speaking in hushed tones. The moment she saw me, her entire body language shifted. She straightened up, her voice got louder, and suddenly she was talking about listing prices and market comparisons. "Just got home, honey," she said into the phone with this forced brightness that made my stomach clench. "I'll call you back about those properties tomorrow." Properties, right. Elena had started her real estate career 8 months earlier, claiming she needed independence and purpose beyond being a stay-at-home mom. I'd supported her completely, even helped with the licensing courses and celebrated when she got her first listing. That something about that phone call felt rehearsed, like dialogue from a play I wasn't supposed to witness. "How was work?" she asked, already moving toward the stairs. "I need to shower before dinner." That was weird, too. Elena never showered before dinner. She was a morning shower person. Had been our entire marriage. I stood there in our kitchen, the same kitchen where we'd shared coffee every morning for a decade, and felt like a stranger in my own home. The kids were different, too, though I couldn't put my finger on how at first. Maddie, our 14-year-old daughter, had always been my little partner in crime. We'd spend Saturdays working on her car, a beat-up Honda Civic I'd bought her to learn maintenance on, and she'd tell me everything about school, friends, boys she liked. But lately, she'd been distant, almost hostile when I tried to engage her in conversation. "Dad, I'm busy," became her standard response to everything. Homework, phone, friends, always something more important than talking to me. And Evan, my 12-year-old son, who usually shouted me around the house on weekends, had started finding excuses to be elsewhere whenever I was home. The breaking point came on a Tuesday evening in October. I'd finished a brutal day debugging a client's network infrastructure and came home to find the house unusually quiet. Elena's car was in the driveway, but the house felt empty. I called out, and Maddie appeared at the top of the stairs. "Where's Mom?" I asked. "She's, showing a house. Won't be back until late." The hesitation in her voice was like a physical slap. Maddie had never been a good liar, and the pause before showing a house lasted just long enough to let me know she was covering for something. "Which property?" I asked casually, pulling out my phone like I might call Elena. Maddie's face went pale. I don't remember the address. Some place across town." I nodded and headed to my home office, but instead of working, I opened my laptop and checked our shared calendar. No showing scheduled. I opened Elena's real estate company website and browsed their listings. Nothing across town had been listed recently, and certainly nothing that would require an evening showing on a Tuesday. My hands were shaking as it opened our phone bill online. I'd never been the suspicious husband type. Never felt the need to check up on Elena or monitor her calls. We'd always had complete trust, or so I thought. But as I scrolled through the call logs, a pattern emerged that made my blood run cold. The same number appeared dozens of times over the past 2 months. Long calls, sometimes lasting hours at all times of day and night. I didn't recognize the number, but I could see it wasn't her real estate office or any of her colleagues whose numbers I knew. I reverse searched the number on my phone, and my world tilted sideways.
Caleb Reed. My brother. My younger brother, who had been struggling financially for the past year since his contracting business failed. The same brother who'd been coming around more often lately, who I'd been helping with rent money and groceries. The brother who the kids adored as their fun uncle. The brother who knew our family schedule better than anyone because I'd been stupid enough to trust him completely. I sat in my office, staring at that phone number until the screen went black, then stared at my reflection in the dark screen. How long had this been going on? How many times had I welcomed Caleb into my home, fed him dinner, lent him money while he was... I couldn't even finish the thought. The front door opened downstairs, and I heard Elena's voice mixed with Maddie's. They were talking quietly, but their voices carried up through the house in a way that suggested they thought I couldn't hear them. "Is Dad home?" Elena asked. "Yeah, he's in his office. I told him he was showing a house." "Good thinking, sweetheart. Did he ask which one?" "Yeah, but I said I didn't remember the address." The casual way they discussed lying to me, the practiced nature of their deception hit me like a physical blow. This wasn't a recent development. This was a system, a routine they'd perfected over time. Elena's footsteps came up the stairs, and I quickly opened a work document, pretending to be absorbed in code reviews. She knocked on my office door, another new behavior, since when did my wife knock, and peeked her head in. "Hey, honey, sorry I'm so late. The clients were incredibly indecisive, kept wanting to see the same rooms over and over." I looked at her, standing in my doorway, this woman I'd shared a bed with for 15 years, who had given birth to my children, who I'd trusted with every aspect of my life. Her hair was slightly messed up, her lipstick was gone, and there was something about her energy that screamed guilt to anyone who knew how to look for it. "No problem," I managed to say. "How'd it go? Did they seem interested?" Elena launched into an elaborate story about difficult clients and pricing negotiations, details flowing so smoothly I realized she'd rehearsed this conversation, probably with my brother's help. Every word felt like another nail in the coffin of our marriage. When she finally went to shower, her second shower of the day, I noted, I sat back in my chair and faced the horrible truth I'd been avoiding all evening. My wife was having an affair with my brother, and my children were helping them hide it. But this was just the beginning of how deep the betrayal actually went, and I was about to discover that everything I thought I knew about my family was built on lies that ran much deeper than I could ever have imagined.
The next morning, I called in sick to work for the first time in 3 years. I needed answers, and I couldn't focus on system architectures and network protocols when my entire life was crumbling around me. Elena kissed me goodbye like nothing had happened, told me she had 3 showings scheduled, and drove off in her sedan with a smile that now looked like a mask. I waited exactly 30 minutes before I started digging. First, I checked our credit card statements online. Elena had her own card on our account for her real estate expenses, and what I found there made my stomach turn. Charges at restaurants I'd never been to, always for 2 people, always during times when she claimed to be working. A hotel charge from last month that coincided with a supposed real estate conference in the next city over. Gas station purchases in locations that made no sense if she was actually showing properties where she claimed to be. But the smoking gun was a charge at Victoria's Secret from 2 weeks ago for $247. Elena hadn't bought lingerie in years, always complaining that we were too busy with kids and work for that kind of thing. The date of the purchase was burned into my memory, because it was the same day she'd told me she was working late and I'd ordered pizza for the kids. I was building a timeline of deception, and every piece of evidence felt like another betrayal. Next, I did something I never thought I'd do. I installed tracking software on our shared computer. Not to spy on Elena, I told myself, but to protect my family's finances and make sure I understood the full scope of what was happening. The software would log keystrokes, capture screenshots, and monitor internet activity. Then I drove to Caleb's apartment.
My brother lived in a rundown complex about 20 minutes from our house. The kind of place he'd moved to after his business failed and his ex-wife took him for everything in their divorce. I'd been helping him with rent for months, telling Elena we needed to support family during tough times. The irony wasn't lost on me now. His car wasn't in the parking lot, which was unusual for a Tuesday morning. Caleb was unemployed. He should have been home sleeping off whatever he'd drunk the night before. I parked across the street and called him. "Hey, John," he answered after a few rings, and I could immediately tell he was somewhere noisy. "What's up, brother?" "Just checking in. How are you doing? Need anything?" "I'm good, actually. Really good. Things are looking up, you know?" The happiness in his voice was like poison in my veins. Of course things were looking up for him. He was screwing my wife while I paid his bills. "Where are you? Sounds busy." A pause. "Just, running errands. You know how it is." I knew exactly how it was. He was probably with Elena right now, maybe having a late breakfast after whatever they've been doing all morning, while I sat at home sick with worry. "Well, don't let me keep you. We should grab dinner soon, just the two of us, like old times." "Yeah, definitely. I'll call you later." He hung up quickly, and I sat in my car outside his empty apartment complex, feeling more alone than I'd ever felt in my life. When I got home, Evan was in the kitchen making a sandwich. My youngest son, who I always felt understood me better than anyone else in the family. He looked up when I walked in, and I saw something in his eyes I'd never seen before. Guilt, mixed with something that looked almost like pity. "Dad, I thought you went to work." "I'm not feeling well today, buddy. Just needed to rest." Evan nodded and looked down at his sandwich. "Mom said she'll be home late tonight again. Another showing." The way he said "another showing" with just the slightest emphasis told me everything I needed to know. Evan knew. My 12-year-old son knew his mother was lying, and the weight of that secret was killing him. I sat down across from him at our kitchen table. "Evan, you know you can talk to me about anything, right? Anything at all." "I know, Dad, but everything's fine. Really." Everything was not fine, and we both knew it. That afternoon, while Elena was allegedly showing properties and the kids were at school, I checked the tracking software I'd installed. What I found there destroyed whatever was left of my faith in my marriage. Elena had been on Facebook Messenger for hours the night before, after I'd gone to bed. The software had captured screenshots of our conversations, and reading them felt like watching my life burn down in real time. "Can't wait to see you tomorrow," she'd written to someone whose name I couldn't see in the capture. "These late nights are killing me, but it's worth it for moments like today." The response, "I love you too. This is complicated, but we'll figure it out. John doesn't suspect anything, does he?" "No, he's completely clueless. Works so much he barely notices what's happening in his own house. Maddie's been great about covering for us, and even Evan's starting to understand that sometimes families change." My hands were trembling as I scrolled through more screenshots. They'd been planning this for months. Elena had been methodically turning my children against me, convincing them that what she was doing was somehow justified, that I was the problem in our family. But the final screenshot broke me completely. "Your brother called earlier. He sounded suspicious about where you were this morning. We need to be more careful." "Don't worry about John. He trusts me completely. Always has. That's his weakness." Caleb. My own brother, discussing my trust in him like it was something pathetic, something to be exploited. I printed every screenshot, saved every piece of digital evidence, and then I did something I should have done weeks ago. I called a divorce attorney. "Mr. Reed," the lawyer said after I'd explained my situation, "based on what you're telling me, you need to document everything. Don't confront them yet. Don't let them know you're aware of what's happening. In cases involving infidelity and potential alienation of children, the parent who gathers the most evidence usually has the strongest position in custody negotiations." Evidence. I needed more evidence. That evening, Elena came home at her usual time with another elaborate story about difficult clients and changing market conditions. She was getting better at lying, more comfortable with deception. Over dinner, she asked about my day, feigned concern about my health, played the role of caring wife while my children watched our interaction like it was a performance they'd seen many times before. After the kids went to bed, Elena curled up next to me on the couch, like she used to in better times. But now her touch felt like betrayal. Her closeness felt like violation. "John," she said softly, "I've been thinking we should plan a family vacation soon, maybe somewhere warm, just the four of us." A family vacation. With money I'd earned while she spent her days with my brother making plans to destroy everything we'd built together? "That sounds nice," I said, and I watched her smile with satisfaction, thinking she'd successfully manipulated me once again. But I was done being manipulated. I was done being the trusting husband and father who worked late while his family plotted behind his back. Tomorrow, I was going to start fighting back, and I was going to discover just how deep this conspiracy against me really went.
The revelation that my own children had been actively participating in Elena's deception hit me harder than discovering her affair with Caleb. I could rationalize, barely, how a marriage might deteriorate, how attraction might fade, how people might make terrible choices in moments of weakness. But my children, Maddie and Evan, who I'd raised from birth, who I'd taught to ride bikes and helped with homework and coached through heartbreaks, they had looked me in the eyes every day for months and lied to protect the people who were destroying our family. Wednesday morning, I pretended to leave for work, but parked 2 blocks away and walked back through our neighborhood's wooded area to observe the house. Elena's routine had become predictable. She'd leave 30 minutes after me, supposedly heading to her real estate office. But I knew better now. What I witnessed that morning shattered whatever remained of my faith in my family. At 8:47 a.m., Elena's car pulled out of our driveway, but instead of turning left toward her office, she turned right toward the route that led to Caleb's apartment complex. I was following her from a distance when my phone buzzed with a text message. It was from Maddie. "Dad, Mom forgot her phone at home. If she calls the house looking for it, can you tell her I have it and I'll bring it to her office after school?" My 14-year-old daughter was actively helping orchestrate her mother's affair, providing alibis and managing logistics like she was running a covert operation. The sophistication of their deception was breathtaking and horrifying. I drove home and found Maddie in the kitchen, getting ready for school. She looked up when I walked in, and for just a moment, I saw fear flash across her face. "Dad, I thought you left for work." "Forgot something," I said, watching her carefully. "Got your text about Mom's phone." "Yeah, she's always forgetting things lately. I figured I'd help out." "That's thoughtful of you. Where exactly is Mom's office again? I might need to stop by later." Another flash of panic. It's, you know, downtown, the main office." I knew Elena's real estate company had 3 offices, none of them downtown. But Maddie was committed to the lie, probably coached extensively on how to handle these kinds of questions. "And you have her phone?" "Yeah, it's upstairs." "Can I see it? I wanted to check if she got my message from last night." The color drained from Maddie's face. "Actually, the battery died. I was going to charge it for her." Elena's phone hadn't been in the house last night. I'd checked. She'd taken it with her, and Maddie knew it. But here was my daughter, my little girl who used to crawl into my lap to read bedtime stories, lying to me to my face with increasing desperation. "Maddie," I said gently, sitting down at the kitchen table, "we need to talk." She grabbed her backpack and headed toward the door. "I'm going to be late for school, Dad." "School doesn't start for 40 minutes. She stopped, her hand on the doorknob, and I saw her shoulders slump slightly.
When she turned around, there were tears in her eyes, but also something harder, resentment. "What do you want me to say, Dad?" The question hung in the air between us, loaded with meaning neither of us wanted to acknowledge. "I want you to tell me the truth." Maddie looked at me for a long moment, and I saw her making a calculation, weighing options, deciding how much she could admit without completely destroying the careful structure of lies she'd been living in. "Mom's been unhappy. Really unhappy. And you're never here, Dad. You work all the time, and when you are here, you're thinking about work or fixing things around the house or planning projects that no one else cares about." Each word hit me like a physical blow. So this is my fault? I didn't say that, but her tone suggested otherwise. "Maddie, whatever problems my mother and I have, that's between us. Children shouldn't be put in the middle of adult relationships." She laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Children? Dad, I'm 14. I'm not stupid. I can see what's happening in this house." "Then you can see that lying to me isn't helping anyone." "Lying to you?" She voice rose. "What about Mom lying to you? What about Uncle Caleb lying to you? What about everyone pretending everything is fine when it's not?" There it was. Confirmation from her own mouth that she knew about Caleb, knew about the affair, knew about all of it. "How long have you known?" Maddie wiped her eyes with her sleeve. "About Mom and Uncle Caleb? A couple months? Maybe longer. And you decided to help them hide it from me?" "I decided to help Mom be happy for once." The simplicity of her statement, the matter-of-fact way she dismissed 15 years of marriage and my role as her father was devastating. "What about my happiness, Maddie? What about our family?" "Our family?" She shook her head. "Dad, our family has been broken for years. You just didn't notice because you were too busy working." She left for school after that, and I sat alone in my kitchen, reeling from the conversation. My daughter had chosen sides, and I wasn't on her team. That afternoon, I decided to talk to Evan. If Maddie was Elena's willing accomplice, maybe my son could help me understand how deep this betrayal went. I picked Evan up from school personally, something I rarely did during the week. He seemed surprised to see me, but climbed into the car without complaint. "Want to get ice cream? Just the two of us?" Evan nodded, but he was quiet during the drive to his favorite ice cream shop. We sat outside at a picnic table, and I watched my 12-year-old son push his sundae around with his spoon, lost in thoughts too heavy for someone his age. "How are things at home, buddy?" I asked gently. "What do you mean?" "I mean, how are you feeling about everything that's been happening lately?" Evan was quiet for a long time, and I could see him wrestling with something internal. Finally, he spoke. "Mom told me that sometimes adults have to make hard choices." "What kind of hard choices?" "About being happy, about what they need." The words sounded rehearsed, like something Elena had coached him to say. "And what about what families need? What about staying together and working through problems?" Evan looked down at his ice cream. "Mom says you wouldn't understand. She says you think everything can be fixed with logic and planning, but that feelings don't work that way." More of Elena's coaching, turning my practical nature into a character flaw, something that justified her betrayal. "Evan, remember when you were little and you broke Mom's vase, the blue one from her grandmother?" He nodded. "You were so scared to tell us, but we talked about how hiding mistakes makes them worse, how being honest, even when it's hard, is always better in the long run." "This is different, Dad." "How is it different?" He looked up at me, and I saw pain in his eyes that no child should have to carry. "Because telling the truth would hurt you more. My 12-year-old son was protecting me by lying to me, and the weight of that responsibility was crushing him.
What if I told you that not knowing the truth is hurting me more than the truth itself could hurt? Evan considered this for a moment. But if I tell you, then I'm betraying Mom and Maddie. And if I don't tell you, I'm betraying you. Either way, I'm hurting someone I love. The sophistication of this moral reasoning, the way Elena had managed to put him in an impossible position, was breathtakingly cruel. You're not responsible for protecting adults from the consequences of their choices, I told him. That's not your job. Then whose job is it? Mine. It's my job to protect you and Maddie, even from situations that are confusing and painful. We sat in silence for a while, eating our ice cream and watching other families enjoy normal afternoons without the weight of secrets and betrayal. Finally, Evan spoke again. Dad, what's going to happen to our family? It was the question I'd been dreading because I didn't have an answer that would make anything better for him. I don't know yet, buddy. But whatever happens, you and Maddie are the most important thing to me. Always. He nodded, but I could see he didn't quite believe me. Elena had spent months convincing my children that I was the problem, that my work and my practical nature and my failure to understand her mother's needs had created this situation. As we drove home, I realized that even if I could forgive Elena's affair, even if I could somehow rebuild trust with Caleb, the thing that might be impossible to overcome was how they had weaponized my children against me. But I was about to discover that the manipulation of my kids was just one part of a much larger, more calculated plan that Elena had been executing for months.
Thursday evening changed everything. I'd spent the day gathering more evidence, documenting Elena's movements, and building a comprehensive picture of her deception. But what I discovered that night revealed that her affair with Caleb wasn't just about romance or even lust. It was part of a calculated, long-term strategy to destroy me financially and emotionally, while positioning herself for maximum gain. The revelation came through the tracking software I'd installed on our computer. Elena had been researching divorce law, specifically focusing on adultery, asset division, and custody arrangements. But she wasn't researching how to protect herself from a cheating spouse. She was researching how to maximize her settlement despite being the cheating spouse. The search history painted a chilling picture. How to hide assets before divorce. Can cheating spouse still get alimony? Parental alienation tactics, and most damning of all, how to prove husband is emotionally abusive. She was building a case against me, documenting our arguments, saving text messages where I'd expressed frustration about her late nights, creating a narrative where I was the villain and she was the victim who deserved sympathy and financial support. But the real smoking gun was an email thread I found between Elena and someone named Marcus Chen, a divorce attorney she'd consulted 3 months ago, long before I had any suspicion about her affair. Marcus, she'd written, thank you for the consultation yesterday. Based on our conversation, I want to clarify a few points about my strategy moving forward. The email laid out her plan in cold, calculating detail. As we discussed, Jonathan makes significantly more money than me, and his work requires long hours that can be portrayed as neglecting family responsibilities. I've been documenting instances where his work commitments interfered with family events or caused arguments. Regarding the custody issue, both children have expressed feeling closer to me than to their father, particularly since I've been more present in their daily lives. Maddie especially has been receptive to conversations about how their father's absence affects the family dynamic. The asset situation is more complex. Jonathan handles all our finances and investments. I'll need time to understand our full financial picture before initiating proceedings. Is there a way to ensure he can't hide assets once I file? The attorney's response was professional but enabling. Elena, documentation is key. Continue keeping records of his work-related absences and any conflicts they create. Regarding assets, we can file for full disclosure once proceedings begin, but having your own documentation beforehand strengthens your position significantly. I printed the entire email chain with shaking hands. My wife hadn't fallen into an affair. She'd orchestrated one as part of a divorce strategy. She'd chosen Caleb specifically because he was vulnerable, financially dependent on me, and desperate enough to go along with whatever plan she proposed. My brother wasn't just sleeping with my wife. He was her co-conspirator in destroying my life. The next piece of evidence came from Elena's phone, which she'd left charging in our bedroom while she showered. I'd never violated her privacy before, but after reading her emails, all bets were off. Her text messages with Caleb revealed the true scope of their collaboration. Elena, John's getting suspicious. He asked Maddie about my schedule yesterday. Caleb, what did she tell him? Elena, she handled it well. We've practiced these scenarios. Caleb, good. How much longer do you think we can keep this up? Elena, a few more weeks, maybe a month. I need to document a few more instances of his emotional unavailability for Marcus. Then we can move forward. Caleb, and you're sure about the money situation? Elena, John's been saving for years without really talking to me about it. There's more than he's told me about. The house alone has appreciated significantly, plus his retirement accounts, the kids' college funds. Marcus thinks I can get substantial alimony based on the lifestyle I've been accustomed to. Caleb, what about me? Elena, what about you? Caleb, after the divorce, where does that leave us? There was a long gap in the message thread, then Elena's response. Let's focus on one thing at a time. First we deal with John, then we figure out what comes next. Reading that exchange, I realized Caleb didn't understand that he was just a tool in Elena's plan. She was using his desperation and jealousy of me to execute her divorce strategy, but she had no intention of building a real life with him afterwards. The final piece of the puzzle came from Maddie's computer. I felt sick about invading my daughter's privacy, but I needed to understand how deep Elena's manipulation went. What I found there broke my heart completely. Elena had been systematically poisoning Maddie against me for months, using private conversations that felt like therapy sessions but were actually indoctrination. Your father loves you, sweetheart, but sometimes adults get so focused on providing material things that they forget about emotional needs. I know it's confusing when Dad seems upset about my work schedule. He doesn't understand that I need to feel valued for something besides being a wife and mother. Uncle Caleb has been such a good friend to our family. He listens when I need to talk about adult problems that your father doesn't want to hear about. The conversations continued over weeks, gradually escalating Elena's victimhood and my alleged emotional failures. She'd convinced Maddie that supporting her affair was actually protecting the family from my harmful influence. Most damaging of all was a recent conversation where Elena had coached Maddie on what to say if anyone ever asked about their family dynamics. If someone asks if Mom and Dad fight a lot, what would you say? That Dad gets angry when work is stressful and takes it out on the family? That's right. And if someone asks if Dad spends time with you kids? That he's always working or doing projects we're not interested in? Good girl. You understand that sometimes we have to protect people from their own mistakes, right? Elena had trained my daughter to testify against me in a custody hearing that I didn't even know was coming. I sat in my home office that night surrounded by printed emails, text messages, and financial records, and realized I was looking at months of premeditated betrayal. This wasn't a marriage that had fallen apart. It was a marriage that had been systematically demolished by someone I trusted completely. But Elena had made one crucial mistake in her master plan. She assumed I would never discover her strategy until it was too late. She'd underestimated the same analytical skills that made me successful in my career, the same attention to detail that she'd been portraying as obsessive and harmful to our family.
I had documented everything. I knew about Caleb, about the manipulation of our children, about her financial planning, about her attorney consultations. I had evidence that would expose her entire strategy and protect both my assets and my relationship with my kids. Elena thought she was playing chess while I was playing checkers. She was about to find out that I'd been learning her game all along, and I was ready to make my move. Tomorrow, I would stop being the naive husband who trusted blindly. Tomorrow, I would start fighting back with everything I had.
Friday morning, I called in sick to work again and drove to the office of Patricia Williams, the divorce attorney I'd researched extensively over the past 2 days. Unlike Elena's lawyer, Patricia specialized in representing clients who'd been victims of infidelity and parental alienation. Her reputation for aggressive advocacy was exactly what I needed. "Mr. Reed," Patricia said after reviewing the evidence I'd compiled, "this is one of the most well-documented cases of premeditated divorce strategy I've seen. Your wife has essentially handed us her entire playbook." She spread the printed emails and text messages across her conference table like a prosecutor laying out evidence for a jury. The fact that she consulted an attorney months before you had any suspicion of problems, combined with her systematic documentation of supposed marital issues, proves this wasn't a marriage breakdown. It was a calculated assault on your finances and parental rights. "What about my brother's involvement?" Patricia's expression hardened. "That adds another dimension entirely. We can pursue alienation of affection claims against him, and his financial dependence on you makes this look like conspiracy to commit fraud. Courts don't look kindly on family members who exploit trust for financial gain." We spent 3 hours developing a counter strategy that would not only protect my assets, but expose Elena and Caleb's entire scheme. Patricia explained that in cases involving infidelity and child manipulation, the spouse who documented everything and maintained moral high ground typically achieved the most favorable outcomes. "Your wife made a critical error," Patricia said. "She assumed you'd never discover her plan, so she left digital evidence everywhere. Meanwhile, you've been the model husband and father throughout this process. That contrast will be devastating for her in court." Monday morning, I implemented the first phase of my plan. I arrived at Elena's real estate office at 9 a.m., knowing she wouldn't be there because she was actually at Caleb's apartment. I asked to speak with her supervisor, a woman named Jennifer, who'd been friendly at office holiday parties. "Jonathan," Jennifer seemed surprised. "Elena's out showing properties this morning. Did you need me to give her a message?" "Actually, I wanted to discuss Elena's work schedule with you. I'm concerned about the hours she's been keeping lately." Her expression grew confused. "What do you mean? Elena works pretty standard hours. She's usually done by 4 p.m. most days." "Really? She's been telling me she has evening showings several nights a week, sometimes not getting home until 10 or 11 p.m. The confusion on her face deepened. "That's unusual. We rarely do evening showings, and when we do, they're scheduled well in advance. Let me check her recent appointments." Jennifer pulled up Elena's schedule on her computer, and what she found there confirmed everything I already knew. "Jonathan, Elena hasn't had an evening showing in over 6 weeks. Her last appointment on any given day has been no later than 3:30 p.m. I feigned shock and concern. "That's strange. She's definitely been working late several nights a week. Maybe she's been showing properties for other agents. That would require supervisor approval, and I haven't approved any cross-agency work for Elena." Jennifer was beginning to understand that something was seriously wrong with Elena's story, and I could see her making mental notes that would be important if this ever became an HR issue. Phase 2 happened that afternoon. I called Caleb and arranged to meet him for lunch, claiming I wanted to discuss a potential job opportunity. We met at a restaurant downtown, and I watched my brother's face carefully as I delivered my carefully rehearsed lines.
John, I've been thinking about everything you're going through, and I want to help you get back on your feet. His face lit up with what looked like genuine gratitude, but I could see the guilt underneath. That means everything to me, John. You've already done so much. Here's what I'm thinking. I've got some connections in the construction industry, and there's a project starting next month that could really turn things around for you. Caleb leaned forward eagerly. What kind of project? It's out of state, though, Arizona. You'd need to relocate for about 6 months, but the pay is excellent, and it could lead to permanent opportunities. I watched the color drain from his face as he realized what I was offering, a way out of town, away from Elena, at the exact moment when their plan was supposed to culminate. That's a great opportunity, he said slowly, but the timing might be complicated. How so? Caleb struggled for words, knowing he couldn't explain why leaving town would be problematic without revealing his affair with my wife. There are some things happening here that I need to be around for. What kind of things? The silence stretched between us as Caleb realized he'd painted himself into a corner. He couldn't accept the job offer without abandoning Elena's plan, but he couldn't refuse it without arousing suspicion about why he needed to stay in town. Can I think about it for a few days? Of course, but they need an answer by Friday. I was giving him exactly 1 week to choose between financial opportunity and his conspiracy with my wife. Whatever he chose would provide more evidence for my case. Phase 3 was the most emotionally difficult part of my plan. That evening, I sat down with both kids for a family meeting. Elena was supposedly at a client dinner, another lie I could now verify, so it was just the 3 of us. I need to talk to you both about some serious things that have been happening in our family. Maddie immediately looked defensive. Dad, if this is about Mom working late, she's just trying to build her career. Maddie, I know Mom hasn't been working late. I spoke with her supervisor today. The silence in our living room was deafening. Both kids looked caught, scared, and uncertain about what was happening. I also know about Uncle Caleb. Evan started crying immediately, the weight of the secret finally becoming too much for him to carry. Maddie tried to maintain her defiant posture, but I could see cracks in her armor. I want you both to understand something very important, I continued gently. None of this is your fault. Adults put you in an impossible situation, and that was wrong. But Mom said, Maddie started. What did Mom say? She said that sometimes families change, and that fighting change just makes everyone more unhappy. Did she also tell you that lying to people you love makes them feel betrayed and hurt? Maddie looked down at her hands. She said we were protecting you from getting hurt. By lying to me for months? By helping her sneak around with Uncle Caleb? Evan sobbed harder. I didn't want to lie, Dad, but Mom said if we told you, you'd get angry and might do something that would hurt the whole family. The manipulation was even more sophisticated than I had realized. Elena had convinced my children that protecting me required betraying me, that honesty would lead to worse outcomes than deception. Kids, I want you to know that whatever happens between your mother and me, you will always be the most important thing in my life. But I also need you to understand that what's been happening isn't normal, and it's not healthy for any of us. Over the next hour, I gently extracted the full scope of what Elena had asked them to do. The lies they'd told, the alibis they'd provided, the way she'd coached them to answer questions about our family dynamics. I recorded our conversation with their permission, explaining that someday they might need proof that they'd been manipulated rather than willingly deceptive. The final phase of my plan activated the following week. On Friday morning, I had Patricia serve Elena with divorce papers at her real estate office, ensuring maximum professional embarrassment. The papers included detailed evidence of her affair, her premeditated planning, and her manipulation of our children. Simultaneously, I had Caleb served with a lawsuit for alienation of affection and conspiracy to commit fraud, including documentation of every dollar I'd given him while he was sleeping with my wife. But the real masterstroke was the letter I'd written to both families, Elena's parents and siblings, Caleb's ex-wife and children, my own parents who'd been devastated when they learned what their younger son had done to their family. The letter laid out the entire timeline of deception, included key pieces of evidence, and made it clear that this wasn't a marriage that fell apart naturally. It was a calculated betrayal by two people who exploited family trust for personal gain. Elena called me that afternoon, screaming through tears about how I destroyed everything. I destroyed everything? I laughed, but there was no humor in it. Elena, you have emails where you planned this entire thing months ago. I have text messages where you and Caleb discussed manipulating our children. You destroyed our family the moment you decided I was worth more to you divorced than married. The kids will never forgive you for this. The kids will understand eventually that I saved them from learning that their mother is the kind of person who uses children as weapons in adult conflicts. You don't understand. I understand perfectly. You thought I was too trusting, too focused on work, too naive to figure out what was happening in my own house. You were wrong. Elena's voice broke. What do you want? I want my children protected from further manipulation. I want fair custody that reflects the fact that you chose your affair over their stability. And I want every dollar you and Caleb plan to steal from me returned with interest. And if I fight this, then every piece of evidence I've gathered